Now, I would like to request our Secretary General of the Naga People's Movement for Human Rights, Neingulo Krome, to give a speech on the Nagas under the yoke of AFSPA.
Mr. Chair, fellow Naga brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of Nagalim, from all Naga areas, ladies and gentlemen, I will take this privilege to share a slight different perspective. AFSPA is the reason for why we're gathered here. AFSPA has been the weapon used by Indian military to kill us for all this year. But AFSPA is not killing any one of us. It is the human being behind the guns. It is the human being behind holding powers to the uniformed personnels of India, the policymakers, civilians like us, lawmakers, ordinary people like us. They are the one who enables uniformed personnels to kill our people. Oting incident is most unfortunate, but Oting incident is a repetition for 3 generations. Let me tell you why this is happening, why this has happened. When Nagas refused to become a part of India, because we're not Indians, when Nagas refused to join the Union of India in 1950, when Nagas boycotted the first Indian general election, and not a single vote was cast, Mr. Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, came to Nagaland, got insulted, went back to Delhi, banged his fist on the table of the Indian Parliament. And he said, I will not allow Nagas to be independent. And even if all the rivers runs red with blood, I will not give independence to Nagas. I will station 1 Indian soldier for every tree in Nagaland and wipe out the Nagas within 1 week. That was his statement and declaration in the Indian Parliament, 1953. 1954, Indian troops started moving in. And what happened is a very, very long story. Entire villages, Naga villages across Nagaland, were burned down to ashes. Our parents had no place to live. They had to go and live in the jungles like animals. Granaries, crops, terrace fields, paddy fields, everything was burned down. Domestic animals, even chickens, were not spared. Many Nagas, our parents, died in the jungles like animals. For up to 2-3 years, many of our elder brothers and sisters were born in the jungles. Many Nagas went to live in the outskirts of Nagaland state, some in Manipur, in Assam, Burma, elsewhere. What were the methods that drove us to that situation with the assertion of the first Indian Prime Minister? Public execution. People were killed publicly, public execution. Like massacre. Entire men folks, the head of the entire men folks was chopped off from the body with the dao, the machete of the chairman of Massacre village. Mass raping of women, like what happened in Yankali, Waka. Men were arrested and their sex organs were deformed. Their genitals were shocked with electrics. Bodies, arms and legs of Naga villagers were chopped off from the bodies. Eyes were punctured. People were hanging upside down. People in group were put in a room, in a smoke-filled room. Entire villagers were put into ground and herded like cattle as concentration camp. Schools and churches were used as concentration camp. Naga villagers were forced to carry things for the Indian army, forced labor to construct their barracks or whatever. Forced starvation was imposed on Nagas. You were not allowed to eat food for starvation. Every Naga family, single family, has a story to tell. We talk about Massacre to Ainam, many of the earlier speakers have spoken. We talk about Yankili, where the 4 teenage girls, 12 years, 13 years, 16 years, and 17 years, 4 of them were raped in the pulpit of the church. One of them is still alive as living testimony. Miss Rose, beauty queen of Ngapram village, who was to be married on that December, was raped in front of her villagers. She had to commit suicide the next day with a note that says, "There's no point in living if this nasty thing can be done and people cannot do anything about it." Have you heard of a woman in Waka where she was raped and hanged upside down, after which sticks were inserted into her private parts, and then her limbs, leg and arms, were shivered, cut off, and her body, naked body trunk, was again molested. This was followed by another pregnant woman, Waka, that was a Lata girl, who was pregnant. They tied a rope to her neck, dragged her body in the compound, and when the fetus of the baby came out from her body, they put it into her mouth. The list is endless, my friend. Oting is walking all of us. But what our elders have gone through is insufferable. The list is endless. But don't think this were happening only to the ordinary Nagas. Again, another Prime Minister of India, Mr. Morarji Desai, in 1997, went to meet Pizzo in London. We thought he went to talk peace, to find some solution. After talking, he told Mr. Pizzo, "I will exterminate all the Nagas without any compunction. No feelings. I will kill everybody. I will exterminate everybody." Telling the president of NNC in London. After that, he came to Kohima, this great prime minister. He was in the Ras Bhavan. One NSF delegation went to meet him and submit a memorandum to share our grievances. He said the same thing to the NSF delegation. "I will exterminate all the Nagas without any compunction." 1977. Now, Nagaland is said to be a state, a proud state, according to some people, very special state, the 16th state of the Indian Union, specially created. You know what? The Director General of Police, in particular Mr. Lukui Sama, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was the first Naga, after IPS was introduced in Nagaland, that he took officially in charge of as the Director General of Police. He went to inaugurate a police station at Peck. He was not alone. He was accompanied by an IGP, one DIG, a commandant, and a host of bodyguards and convoys. the DGP of Nagaland Police State. He was detained by the 15 Garwals at Chakabama. His entire entourage was detained. They were not allowed to move from Chakabama. That is the top police officer of Nagaland State. One cabinet minister at that point in time. These are happenings in the 80s and 90s, late 80s and 90s. One cabinet minister, I will not tell his name. He was coming in his official ambassador white car from Mokokchung to Kohima. His car with the Indian flag flying proudly. His car was shot by the Assam Rifles near Chapopozo, near Chachama. He was stopped, his bodyguard beaten, manhandled, and the minister dragged out from the car. He had to stand on the side of the road with his hands up, along with many other people, passengers, bus coming from Waka and from Mokshin and elsewhere. He had to stand on the side of the road, hands up, for more than 1 hour with other public. In that episode, another 2 Naga top IAS officials, in fact, the first 2 Naga IAS officials, were also stopped and made to stand along with them. These are the top bureaucrats treated like criminals. They're supposed to be the lawmakers. Another minister who was coming back from church in Kohima town with his wife, children, and bodyguard. He was stopped, slapped by the Indian Army in Kohima town. And the Indian Army also broke into the official residence of another minister. If you would have noticed, there are a couple of official residences of ministers on top of the road on the way to Science College in Zosama. Army went to their house, dragged them out, made them stand in the line in the road to Science College. All his guests, his family members, wife and children, they had to stand in the road at night. If this is happening, if this can happen because of AFSPA, and if these lawmakers, the top officials, people who give order, could not even resist or complain, what do you think that ordinary Naga people living in the villages can do? In the midst of this situation, which continues unabated, unchallenged, NPMHR, as the first human rights organization, we filed a petition in the Supreme Court of India in 1982 challenging the constitutional validity of Armed Forces Special Powers Act in a democratic country or in any democracy, although India prides itself as the world's largest democracy. If it is a democracy, how can an act like AFSPA exist in a democracy? That is our question and our challenge. This petition was heard after 15 years in 1997, just when ceasefire came. And the Supreme Court of India upheld, saying, within quote, the act in itself is good. And the National Human Rights Commission was sitting in the Supreme Court during the hearing. And the National Human Rights Commission supported the act and the application of this act in Nagaland and in Northeast area, some part of Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. That's why it is still continuing. Again, to come back home, closer home, we filed another petition in the Guwahati High Court in 1987, after the ONM incident took place. Again challenging this AFSPA and to seek justice for the victims of ONM. For 5 years, 2 judges heard the petition, which runs into 10,000 pages. Testimonies of victims and testimonies of eyewitness accounts. we had to carry in a Tula Bosta those testimonies, took it to Guwahati. When the hearing was completed in 1992, before the judgment could be pronounced, Government of India transferred both the judges out of Guwahati High Court. This has not happened anywhere in any democracy, not only in India, but not anywhere in the world. And India is proud that it can do such thing. Today, the case is still lying there. The 10,000 pages of testimonies of victims and eyewitness accounts are still lying there. If we want any judgment, we have to start from the beginning again. Where's the money? Where's the time? Where's the resources to start again? That has been our question. There has been international response anyway. In 1991, one United Nations observed and celebrated the second Human Rights Conference, which happens only once in 25 years, in Vienna, Austria. Luckily, I was also there in that conference. The participants of this World Conference declared India in the top 10 list of worst human rights record. Sorry, this was 1993. In 1991, in the second periodical report of the world, who has to submit their human rights record once in a while, in the second periodical report in 1991 March, 18 expert countries from the United Nations questioned India how AFSPA can be a law in a democracy like India. The Attorney General of India defended left and right, back and forth, lying through his teeth. At the end, the expert committee told them that AFSPA contravenes and contradicts not only Indian laws, but Indian international law standards. Such act as AFSPA contravenes any international law standard, not only human rights, any kind of law. After ceasefire came in 1997, for the first time, we were able to go to the United Nations in 1998. And we shared about AFSPA and the human sufferings when the rest of the world was talking about education, health, environment, and so on and so forth. United Nations in Geneva allotted us a special room on the 31st of July, 1998, and asked people to come and listen to the Naga story. And we called that meeting under the caption, 365 days of ceasefire in Nagalim. And this meeting was chaired by the Secretary General of UNPO inside the United Nations. Ever since, we have been raising our issues, these issues and concerns of AFSPA, in so many human rights meetings, in so many UN meetings till today, and under pressure from the different corners of India, from different corners of the world, India was compelled to constitute a committee headed by a Supreme Court judge, retired Supreme Court judge, to study into the applicability of AFSPA in India, to please the world as they have no more answer. So the Jivan Reddy committee was established in 2004. It interviewed and then did its study all over India and submitted its report in 2005, which strongly recommended for the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. But the government of India did not even listen to its own committee, which they themselves has constituted in 2004. But this recommendation was strongly supported by United Nations agencies such as the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, the UN Special Rapporteurs on the Situation of Human Rights Defenders, and the UN Special Rapporteur against extrajudicial killings and disappearances, Mr. Christophe Hayes in particular, who personally came to study this aspect defeated by the United Nations in 2012. But he was not allowed to cross Guwahati. So we had to rush from Manipur, from Nagaland, and elsewhere to Guwahati to meet him. But he wrote a very strong letter to the government of India that AFSPA should be repealed. In all these processes of human rights violation, whether it was Oinam or elsewhere, Amnesty International has been following the Naga story. They have been making reports here and there. In their last frustration, they wrote one small recommendation to the government of India. India is known as the world's largest democracy. Why don't you remove AFSPA and become the world's greatest democracy, from being the largest democracy to be the greatest democracy? Remove AFSPA, then you'll be the greatest democracy. India did not listen. You know what, in the last couple of years, last year or previous years, international media don't call India as the world's largest democracy anymore. From now on, India is referred to as the world's most populous democracy, highest population, full of population, with no democracy, but full of population. So many journalists, while referring to India, outside India, will call India as the world's most populous democracy. But how has this been happening in Nagaland? One Nagaland state was created. Nehru made his assertion. Disturbed Area Act was invoked in 1955. And Armed Forces Special Powers Act was applied in these areas after 1957. But during this time, this disturbed area was applicable only in the 5-kilometer belt of the international boundary. Not entire Nagaland, not half of Nagaland. In 1986, Government of India extended this 5-kilometer belt to 20-kilometer belt in 1986, where NSF vehemently protested against this extension. And you know what happened? Government of Nagaland, instead of listening, killed Kakojale and Vikozo. Kakojale was killed just on this footpath in front of this big tall building which you can see here. There was no house at the time. Vikozo was killed just under the gate, the Naga gate leading to NSF office. 2 of them were killed, just there. The rest injured, flying, running here and there to Naga Bazaar, to Midland, to wherever. The Chief Minister of Nagaland, he was watching the entire episode from his office window. His office was just here, beyond the pine trees, which you can see. One Naga elders, in the midst of firing, went to his office and requested, please stop the firing, please stop the killing. He laughed. Ha ha ha, what can I do? That is the kind of stories that we have. After March 5th incident happened in Kohima in 1995, where people have already, some speakers have already shared. The DC of Kohima, who was going out on leave, Mr. Dr. L.V. Reddy, was ambushed and killed just outside the NSF Martyrs Park, just on that road. We were having a procession in Delhi, NPMHR with Nagas in Delhi, and all our networks and supporters. He was killed that time. What government of India did was, they told the government, will you declare the entire state of Nagaland as a disturbed area and enforce the Armed Forces Special Powers Act to the entire state of Nagaland? Or will we impose president rule? Decide. That was the order of the government of India. The cabinet meeting took place under Sijam. And the meeting decided that Armed Forces Special Powers Act will cover the entire state of Nagaland, and the Nagaland government will be saved. They would rather have power than safety for the people, for its own people. That was what happened, as far as AFSPA is concerned. That's why from then till now, every 6 months, this AFSPA has been extended. This Disturbed Area Act has been extended to enable AFSPA. But the sad thing, and most interesting, or I say ironically, when this OT incident took place, people were mourning, people were protesting everywhere in Nagaland and elsewhere, even in Thailand, even in Delhi, Bangalore, Calcutta. Nagas joined by non-Nagas protesting against this OT killing. Mr. Sijamir told Nagaland TV that it was a mistake. How did he know it was a mistake? Was he part of the plot to kill Nagas? Or how did he know? Listen, gentlemen, when government of India wanted to solve Naga problem, before this became uncontrollable in 1963, before the state was created, Nehru wanted to meet Piso and discuss the Naga problem. Mr. S. Jamir was the parliamentary secretary under the Ministry of External Affairs under Prime Minister of India. Nehru made this statement in the parliament that he wanted to meet Piso. So he wrote to Mr. P. Silu, who was the chief executive councillor, not yet chief minister, because Nagaland was still not a state, saying, and let me read, if he, means Nehru, starts negotiating with Piso, I am prepared to come back because there is no use sitting here to be only a laughing stock. I believe that we are also quite capable to create more troubles than the hostiles can do. The hostiles can do. We can create more trouble than the hostiles can do. This is the architect of the 16-point agreement. This is the architect, the words of the architect of the creation of the state of Nagaland, for which Nagas have suffered generation after generation, divided into nation states, into states within states, Nagas of Nagaland, Nagas of Manipur, Nagas of Assam, Nagas of Arunachal. What bullshit is that? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.